Hi, I'm Sarah,
Hi, I'm Sarah.
Hi, I'm Alex.
Hi, I'm Ella.
and today we're talking about consent. I think the thing that scares me the most about this topic is actually how badly educated it is. I think we touched upon this in a different video where we were talking about the consent videos that we were shown when we came to uni, and it was like if someone doesn't want tea, don't give them tea, and all this stuff. And I remember saying that like that's fine for when you're in like primary school sort of time, but when you're coming into uni as an 18-year-old or older, um, there needs to be a little bit more educational and not just giving it a tea analogy, because I still think that there's some like grey areas that for some reason people don't understand.
Yeah.
Specifically, I would like to touch upon like people being intoxicated. I think sometimes people just don't understand that when someone is intoxicated, whether it be drugs, alcohol, whatever, they are not in a position to give consent.
I just want to talk about also psychological manipulation for consent. I think we talk a lot about intoxication or like being drugged, which is really, really, really bad. But I think consent can also come from mentally manipulation. Like um, last time I saw on Twitter, there was this guy saying, "Oh, if you invite a girl over at your place and she doesn't want to sleep with you, pretend you're calling another girl and you're gonna see somebody else, so she's gonna feel bad and she's gonna end up sleeping with you." And that's manipulation, or yeah, putting pressure like, "Oh, but if you don't want to sleep with me, then you should leave," or being mean. And I think then the persons end up saying yes, but that doesn't really mean that they wanted to. It's also psychological, and I think we should also educate people more on that subject, and
Definitely.
we should talk about this more.
Yeah.
Or similarly to that, making people feel like they can't say no, like not necessarily threatening, but just like obviously you can threaten people with physical violence or that kind of thing, or make them feel unsafe like that. I think just sort of like emotional manipulation, like what Sarah was just saying, was sort of like guilt tripping as well, being like, oh, so do you not fancy me then? Like, oh, why don't you want to sleep with me? That kind of thing. As well ties into that.
Yeah. I think there's just a lot of confusion around how like if someone's drunk or intoxicated, how like if they can actually give consent, like how drunk they are when it crosses a line, because drunk sex is normal and having sex whilst taking drugs is normal and it can still be consensual. But um I feel like uh I don't know. I feel like it's obvious to me, maybe just because as a girl, like you're kind of aware of how many like lies and like little kind of like things that you'll kind of like say or do, or like a way you'll act if you kind of are in a situation and you don't want to actually sleep with a guy, like kind of like, oh, I'm tired, like, oh, I'm on my period, like if you don't want to offend them or something. And I mean, yeah, I feel like it's very obvious when someone doesn't want to sleep with you. um yeah, and I don't really know why it's so hard for guys to kind of understand it, and like the whole like if people are laughing and stuff and giggling, like that's them kind of being like awkward. Like I, I don't know. I don't really understand why men struggle so much to why the line is so blurred for them.
That it also happens for what Alex said, like my period time, because it also happened in just relationships, and people tend to think that if it's your boyfriend, if it's your husband, they can rape you because the fact that you are in a relationship give them constant consent, which is not
Yeah.
true. And it's also something that I feel like a lot of people who have been in relationship don't even realize that they have been manipulated into like having sex at some point where they didn't want to. And I feel like I remember I had a friend and we were talking about this, and she clearly couldn't understand that your boyfriend could rape you. And I think she has been a victim of it, and that's why she didn't understand, because she was like, "No, it's normal if you don't want to, but I mean, just to make them happy, you will still do it." And she was like saying that that's a normal, basically. And I remember being like, "No, you have the right to say no." And she didn't really understand that because it's like we're in a relationship. So I feel like even, and this for some girls, like you said, guilt trip, we should like be way more educated on that, and to know that it's not because you're in a relationship that it gives you constant consent.
most
I feel
rapes are people that you buy from people that you know.
Yeah.
And I just want to say as well, I think like especially for straight men, because they have such a pressure of like society telling them that they have to always enjoy sex, they have to always want to have sex and that kind of thing. Coercion is probably quite like a prominent issue for them, because go like if especially if peer pressure with all their friends being, oh why, like come on, like sleep with that girl, why don't you want to, like you should want to, that kind of thing. Feeling pressure into sleeping with people. And as well, like when I was talking earlier about manipulation, I feel like a lot of the time maybe girls don't realize they're being manipulative with their like insecurities and things, in straight relationships with men specifically I'm talking about at the moment. Like maybe saying like, oh, like why don't you want to have sex with me, do you not fancy me, like what have I done wrong, and then the boy might feel pressured then to like have sex with her.
I think as well that's like such a common thing like that specifically, because I can even think of times when I've kind of like, you know, like not that my
Yeah,
pride was hurt, but like maybe I did feel a bit self-conscious of myself within that time, and I'm like, oh, like say
definitely.
I might have like worn a nice outfit, you know, to instigate something, and he's like, oh, I'm not really in the mood, and then I'm kind of like stood there in this sexy outfit and I'm like, does this not put you in the mood? Like what? But like I mean, I think the thing that's so important, like it's okay to kind of have like this, oh, like okay,
Yeah,
but it's
okay to feel insecure. There's nothing, well obviously it's not good and no one wants to feel insecure,
no,
but we all do. It's understandable, especially the pressure that's put on girls and that kind of thing. Like of course we are going to feel insecure in that situation, but the important thing
is
is
not to
like
use
is to
it.
process that yourself and to not manipulate
Yeah,
the person who you care about in that circumstance.
definitely. Like not put it on them and have it as their responsibility to then make you feel better, you know,
Yeah,
like it does come from within, like kind of just take a step back, maybe like, well, save it for another day kind of thing.
communication is key.
Yeah,
yeah, it's kind of just like it's been romanticized as well to when a guy like doesn't take an over an answer, it's like, oh, he's trying, that's effort. And it's like, no, like that isn't effort, like it's harassment. Like effort is, oh, like yeah, we'll get to know each other more and then you pursue them. But if it's a straight up no, like in Greek mythology, there's I think there was like a goddess called like Hera or Hera or something, and she like refused, like she turned down Zeus, and he then transformed into like a dove or something, and like appeared at her window. So like, you know, she was like, oh, this is so cute, like I'll let him in my room. So she opened the window, and then he like transformed back and raped her, and then they ended up getting together because she was like, oh, okay, like I guess I'll accept this, and like we've had sex now. So but there's like this blurred line that people have, that once you kind of initiate sex and like you go in with the intention of having some kind of like sexual act with someone, and then in the moment when you actually decide I don't really want this anymore, it's like, well, if you're already like, well, you've got like half your clothes off, so like yeah, like it's happening, like it's like no, you can say no. And I think it was in Alabama or something I seen like a couple months ago, where they in some court had, you know, had straight up like said in an interview and stuff that oh, what was it, it was just like once you initiate it, then there's no like, once, oh yeah, once you engage in sex, then consent has already been like given, you can't say no anymore, like that's it. And I mean, yeah,
I think that with that in mind, there's also like, I think there's such a fear, I don't know about men, but I think for women, that if once you're having sex, or once you're about to have sex or whatever, if you then change your mind and say no, like the fear that they won't stop, and then that becomes something that you don't want it to be, so then going ahead with it anyway even though you don't want to, because you'd rather that than you've explicitly said no and then they've carried on, I think is like another sort of fear. That's why you just really need to check. Like I think people obviously sometimes you just sort of know that it's fine, but like I think just like verbal consent is so important. Just saying like, are you okay with this? Yeah, like that's all you need to do, I think. But I don't know.
Yeah, I was in a situation like that before with a guy, and it was only like you know, a couple months after, when I looked back at it, I realized that it kind of was like fucked up. I mean, you know, like I was kind of like, I didn't really know how to say no. I was kind of just like like laughing, kind of like, no, like just stop, like kind of like you know, trying to like push him off type thing. And it, you know, was kind of like persistent, and then like, you know, kind of like, oh well, pin you down type thing, like to be like hot. And I just didn't really know how to like fully be like, no, like actually fucking stop, because I didn't want to like offend him or like make him angry, or I don't know, just like make it awkward. So I remember just being like, right, okay, like this is happening, like, and then just he was like taking my clothes off and shit, and I was remember just being like, this is so uncomfortable, and kind of like struggling away and being like, I don't know, and like he still kept doing it, and then I just, yeah, I mean, I just let it happen then, because I don't know, yeah, it's kind of what you said. I just didn't really want to feel like that. I couldn't accept that that was gonna happen to me, and like
See,
yeah.
this for me, like, I find slightly triggering because like I'm like basically quite a similar thing happened to me, and but I had said no, and I kept like so a boy came to my house, and I was like, before he'd even arrived, I was like he the meetup was probably with the, you know, both of us in the back of mind probably had the intention when we first organized it to do something. We'd had slept together in the past, but I just said, oh, this time can we just watch Twilight, or, you know, like just not do anything, like. And like I said, like I'm not really in the mood. I think I'd had like bad news about a family member that day or something. I was like, I'm just not really like in a place where I'm like fine with that. um Weirdly enough, they didn't actually ever reply to that text, but they did turn up at my house like 3 hours later, like than they were supposed to. And I was just like, right, okay. And like they came in, and it was, you know, it was fine. We were watching Twilight, and then, you know, there's like the little hand movements, like the slow sort of like touching the thigh, and then like kind of going up, and like, you know, and I was kind of just like say his hand was there, I'd be like physically moving his hand and be like, can you not? um and like, you know, I moved sofas, so I was sat on a different sofa from him, but I was so scared of like asking him to leave my house, and, you know, one thing led to another, and, you know, stuff happened, and I, you know, I had said no, and I had tried to push him off, but in the end, like you said, Alex, it's, you know, in the end I just let it happen because I was so scared of actually physically pushing him or physically starting, like, you know, it almost a violent act in itself, like pushing him off. I was so scared of doing that. Like I could say as much as I wanted, no, 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 but I was like, he's literally not taking that as an answer, and I don't want to physically be the person to like push him, or, you know, like, and you know what, I did end up going to the police about that, and like reporting it as rape like about 3 months after. And you know what, like I find that like so triggering with these stories is they were like, are you sure you said no? Are you sure you didn't, you know, like, you know, you let him into the house, you guys had slept together before, um you know, are you sure, like, because if you were to take this any further, like you need to know that we need to know that like it's exactly how you say it, you know, it's not like you didn't change your mind afterwards and then decide that it was rape and all this. And I was like, no, like I know. And they were literally just like, yeah, no, like you could, like, it's basically just his word against yours. And I was like, I literally sent him a text after he left saying, when someone says no, they mean no. So there was that, and he blocked me on Facebook after that. Then there was the pictures, and they still were asking questions like, you know, you'd slept with him before, you'd let him into the house, you'd, you know, you eventually let him do it, so that is consent basically. And they were like, I don't think it's rape, I think it's a consensual issue where you weren't really clear on what you wanted. And I'm like, how clear does a girl have to be? You know, like,
even your, if your body language, like it, you shouldn't even have to explicitly have said no. The fact that you had already texted him beforehand saying, I don't really feel like doing anything today, the fact that you were moving away from him, closing legs, he should have then said, oh, like, are you okay with this? And then you would have said, oh no, sorry. And like, oh, okay, cool, no worries. It's just like, you shouldn't, I don't know, I think that in that kind of situation you shouldn't even have had to explicitly say no. He should have picked up on that and like, or at least asked you before that.
but I was so adamant that it wasn't rape, like in my head. I called my friend and was like, this just happened, and I was just like, she was like, you do realize that's rape? I was like, it's not, like I did let it happen. And she's just like, that's
where the lines are so blurred, and that's why people don't seem to like understand. They think rape is like a a creepy stranger in an alleyway suddenly pinning you down. Like that's very rarely the case. It's
No.
like it's so often people that you know, people that you trust.
Whenever it's like the fear of actually kind of accusing them as well, because
Oh,
like
hell
their
yeah.
first reaction would be of like, well, like fuck off, like I'm not that kind of guy. Like if you'd said no like that, I would have just like, of course we don't have to fucking do this. Like it's that kind of like putting them, because once you kind of say that, like, you know, you put your foot down, you're like, no, like I've said fucking no, like get off me type thing. That's, it completely changes it then, and that's when it becomes like a real serious like moment where they're kind of like, right, are you gonna fucking do something about this? Like, are you gonna go and like just ruin my life? Like, and like it's a very yeah, it's a very very like awkward moment. Like I was seeing this guy one time, and I was hanging out at his, and like I was just wearing like, you know, baggy t-shirt or something, and like had, you know, no underwear and stuff on underneath, because you're just chilling whatever. And it was like, you know, kind of like stuff was like, you know, he's trying to initiate stuff, and I just was like, no, like I'm not in the mood. Kept removing like, you know, the hands from my body and stuff. And I was just like, can you actually like fucking stop? Like I've said no, like it's weird now. He was like, what did you expect coming in here like with no like underwear on? Like, you know, like you can't tease me like that. And I was just like, are you fucking kidding me? Like you seriously think that what, because I'm not wearing a bra or like underwear, that it just means that that is what, you know, I want this right now, that like you can just take me. Yeah.
That's where a lot of the problem comes from, the victim blaming, and they're like, oh, what were you wearing? Like all classic
Yeah.
things like that. And like, or even the language we use around it, we say women raped by men rather than men raped women. Like I saw something about that recently, like all this stuff that adds up like slowly to that's then why victims find it hard to believe that that's happened to them, because they're like, it must have been my fault, because that's what people are relentlessly told, is like that
Yeah.
it's you must have done something, you know. Or especially in that kind of scenario, if it's someone that you know, you think, okay, you know, maybe I must have led them on, or like you know, okay, is it my fault for kissing them or whatever? Like it's never
Yeah.
anyone's fault.
And I think as well, like
not.
when I look back, there was warning signs, and I almost blame myself for not picking up on the warning signs until after. But I mean, so mine was like with a boy in my school, and it became very evident once the police got involved what was going on. And do you know what makes me, like, I literally have said this so many times, I'd rather go through the actual event again than go through the aftermath again, because the amount of shit that just got spurred. And I was in my PE lesson, we were doing trampolining, and I was spotting for someone, and some girl just came up to me and went, I think you should cancel the police like investigation. I was like, excuse me. And she's like, oh, with this boy. And I'm like, right. She goes, yeah, I just like, I don't think it's worth ruining his whole life for. And I'm
He
like,
ruined his life. He did that. That's like, you have to try and bear in mind, okay, when you're feeling like blame for yourself, think, if this was another woman I was hearing about, would I blame her? No, I wouldn't. So I shouldn't
no.
blame myself. I think that's what, and people say like, oh, there's so many false accusations. Why would people go through all of that? Like you just said, the aftermath for you was worse. So why would you want to go through that just for the lols if it hadn't happened? Like
Yeah.
what would be the point? What would be the point? And like rapists rarely get even jail time anyway. So like
It
you're
probably
not
wouldn't have
gonna,
even gone to court.
you're not doing it for like revenge for someone, because it's not going to work out for you, is it? So no one's ever going to just do that. And I'm aware that a very very tiny percentage of that does happen sometimes, but often like people who commit false rape claims get way more jail time than actual rapists do. So it's like, you know, they're dealt with.
It's so hard to believe. People like the police now, they never believe the victim first. Like I said, there could be like 10 girls saying this guy is a fucking rapist, and they would not believe it. They were like, well, where are your proof? Do I carry a camera on me? They don't understand that rape can happen at any moment. It's not like something like that you definitely will have proof. And so they will ask you for proof. But then if the predator just say, I didn't do it, they're like, see, they didn't do it. And
I
they
think
directly believe it. That's the proof that they need. They directly believe it. But then when the victim talks, it's always like, oh, well, you don't have proof. No, 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 which I think is a big problem. That's why I hate when
Yeah.
people say, when they talk about something that happened to them, and people like, well, why didn't you just go to the police? You're like, because it's like also like after something bad happened, I saw something that was saying, oh, you have to like don't take a shower, keep your clothes, put this somewhere. It's something hard to do. I imagine after something like this happened to you because you want to
Definitely.
The trauma you're already going through, like your brain isn't working in like a clinical way.
thinking about the process that you that thinking about that and okay, I have to go to the police, explain the story. I don't know how many times. They won't believe me. They will say triggering things. And I think people have to why didn't you just go to the police too easy? Because it's like not that simple. It's not just you go to the police and they take the guy or the girl, the predator, and then arrest them.
I was just going to say, if I think especially if it's a woman who has raped a man, people really like have so much disbelief about that because they're like, oh well, like how did he get hard then? Like that, that can't be rape, that kind of thing. That's like if you're having sex, well, it's not sex, it's rape, but if you've been forced into a sexual act that you do not consent to, that is rape. Like it's just, you shouldn't have all these questions. You shouldn't feel like you're being blamed or interrogated about it. Like I would always rather believe someone who's lying than not believe someone who's telling the truth, because when you find out they're lying, you can be like, oh right, well, fuck you then. But like if they're not and you don't believe them, then the trauma that causes them,
Oh, yeah. I think
And
like it's so much more damaging when you don't believe them and you put someone through all of that, because for me it was like like I doubted myself. I For years, like it's only been recent, like it happened like 5-6 years ago, and I've only recently been like, yeah, like that was what it was. But I think the thing that, and I was speaking to my mum about this last night or yesterday even, and I was like, it just pisses me off, this whole innocent until proven guilty. I completely get it. Just because someone is innocent until proven guilty doesn't mean that the victim is a liar until proven not to be a liar. Because I can claim this, and like I understand that there needs to be proof that this person is guilty. But just
but
because
why does
there is
that
no
not
proof,
apply? That should apply to victims as well, that you're
yeah,
innocent until proven guilty. Because
exactly.
like, why are you being treated like a criminal and like interrogated
mhm.
when they should believe you're a victim unless they can prove otherwise?
And then people's like main kind of thing that they come back with is like, oh well, think about the amount of women that kind of lie about things like that. And I think I read somewhere it's like, I think this statistic is literally 2% of, or
Or
maybe
less
you
even.
actually said that to me before, that it's literally like 2% of uh things like that. So it's like, imagine how terrifying it actually is for women, rather than like men are worried now about being falsely accused, but it's like you only had to worry about that in the last like
And if you have, if you
years.
don't do it, if you ask consent and you aren't behaving in a creepy way, then you don't have anything to worry about. So it's the people who are worried who I would be like, well, you probably do have something to worry about, mate, because if you
Yeah.
think something you've done is wrong, then it probably is. But if you
Yeah,
if you just simply don't assault people, you'll be fine.
and I feel like, yeah, definitely guys, it's kind of like like lad banter, like locker room talk of like certain things they'll say, or um that they'll do that isn't straight up rape, but so they feel it isn't as bad. Like what comes to mind is, like, have you ever seen American Pie? I think it's just like the very very first one, where he, like, one of the guys invites a girl around to his house, like this really hot girl that all the guys are attracted to, and he like plans to, like, I think he spills something over, or she has to get changed for whatever reason in his bedroom, so he has his like webcam on his laptop up on purpose, and like that they're like, him and his mates, they're sitting there watching her on the computer while she's getting changed and stuff, and like things like that have kind of, like, American Pie disgusts me because of how just vile it is, but like people think it's funny.
I'm the same. There's a lot of films I think of, and I watch them and I get sick to the stomach, because I'm like, that's actually like vile behavior, but it's actually behavior that is actually, because the movie is like funny, it actually genuinely encourages that behavior. And I'm like,
Mm.
I don't there's not enough education out there in schools, in universities, like any of these sort of platforms where like, and then when someone does talk about it, it's almost like, you're being a bit like over the top, like, there's not there's not enough understanding of consent as a thing, but also what is right and what isn't right. That's what I find so scary. But and like I said, maybe I'm just too nice, but I don't necessarily always blame. Yeah, obviously there's some people I'm just like, yeah, your actions were entirely
I
wrong.
think we
But
have to be careful to make a difference between what explains. A lot of fact can explain a situation, but it does not excuse them.
yeah,
And I think that's where we have to like put a line. It's like all of this thing that explains why
yeah,
they acted that way. Like, all right, maybe they have been abused as a kid, maybe they've been through trauma, so it explains, but that doesn't mean it's excuse them.
yeah. You basically
Mm.
took the words out of my mouth that I wasn't able to say. That's exactly kind of
Or
no, like exactly. But I think once we also get to the bottom of the explanations, you know, you can actually confront them and bring them to the surface and actually like educate people better and kind of get rid of the explanations, especially like when they're allowed to be used as excuses, you
yeah,
know.
feminism has helped a lot men that get sexually assaulted in the way that from
Mhm.
what I've seen or heard, when a man gets sexually assaulted, I feel like women, most of the time, I'm not saying all women, but I'm more like, I believe you, I want to help you, this is disgusting. Whereas guys, most of the time will answer like, well, she was hot, like I would have accepted, no. And I feel like that's where also we have to yeah, that's why, when we say feminism is also beneficial for men, there's also in this area, I feel like feminism has helped men with when they've been through, but I feel like we can still work on it a lot.
And don't you
So
think it's such a problem with like what Alex was just saying, it's sort of treated like it's funny, like that kind of thing, like if you're saying about like a woman going up to a bouncer and be like, oh, you've got to give me a full body pat down. Like I think in popular culture it's still really socially acceptable to make jokes like that, like women being a little bit creepy to men, where it's not so much acceptable the other way around anymore in popular culture to present it like that, but it's seen as something that should be funny and that should be laughed at and stuff. And like Sarah just said, like if you saw a girl being a bit like creepy to a guy, you might just be like, oh lol, like hopefully we wouldn't think like that, and that's what we need to change, is that we can't think like that. But you're more inclined to see it as a joke because that's how it's presented to us, whereas actually it's just as serious and needs to be taken just as seriously. And the same goes for same-sex people. Like it's not a male-female
Yeah,
thing.
sorry about that. Yeah.
No, that's
I'm sort of fearful. In fact, like when I talk about feminism, my little brother goes, well, if we got arrested for the same crime, I'd get longer because I'm a guy. And there is like, there is truth behind that. That like within the prison system, it does favor women over men majority of the time. But do you know, like the thing that I get irritated about, like it's okay to recognize that, but you've kind of got to come with like, an extra eye of like, why is that?
if he has a problem with that inequality, then he should have a problem with all the other inequalities
That's
that women face. Like I feel like a lot of the time men only bring up issues that they face in retaliation to women talking about issues that they face, which just like it's not okay, because most of the time feminists are fighting for those issues a lot more than the people bringing them up are. But if you're only using your experience to shut down someone else's experience, then it's not
Actually,
it's like
like
misogyny
a
versus
valid argument.
misandry.
like, I don't think that feminism will ever like the literal definition of feminism, what feminism really is, will ever make men feel less, because it's also something about society. It's been so long in the society that men have like the power.
Jordan Peterson, he's like a clinical psychologist that I like would listen to a lot, and he's like a really intelligent guy, so like good at his job, but he has a lot of beliefs that like he's not a very liberal person, like he's pretty much a homophobe to a certain extent, and like doesn't really get feminism. Like his like Sarah, I think what you just said there about or I think maybe it was Ella who just said that they use it as like they use their oppression to kind of like excuse ours or like make ours feel like less important. Like his like video of like dismantling feminism is like him being like, oh well, what about the statistics for, you know what I mean, like it was always men in the war, like so many like male men commit way more like suicides and like have more mental health issues than women. Like men are incarcerated like for longer and way more often than women. Like, why don't we fix those scales? And it's like, yes, like obviously that isn't great that men's mental health is so fucked. But I mean, there is so much more there. Like,
and that's often due to the patriarchy and stuff anyway, and feeling like they can't express their emotions and stuff. And with the war, women weren't allowed to fight in the war. So that's just an example of oppression.
About why
we
you
just the kids.
put one day on your story, Alex, makes me think of, you said it was something saying males suffer from their own toxic masculinity, and I feel like in mental health, I wouldn't maybe say toxic masculinity, but like the society makes men think you have to be strong, you have to be like, you don't cry, you never like tired, you just pop, 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 pop. And I feel like, you know, once more time, I feel like feminism can help them with that, because feminism, with the first one saying, yeah, do you know the suicide rate is so big for male? And now we talk about it, but like, even if you analyze like guys between them, sometimes you have like in a group of friends between boys, you will see one boy really depressed. And I feel like girls, we see it more easily, whereas their friend, they're going to be like, no, he's fine. And you're like, don't you see your friend?
Yeah.
As well, to like link it to, you know, consent as well, is like, you know, strength. There is like a very rigid societal view of what being strong is. And I think, you know, we are all human, we all process everything so differently. We all have, you know, a human reaction is anger, happiness, excitement, upset, depression, feeling on top of the moon. Like, there's so many different human emotions, and they're all human, they're all normal. Everybody has them. And I think, you know, everyone deals with those and shows those emotions in different ways. When I'm happy, I sing and dance. When someone else is happy, they might want to paint, they might want to cook a cake, like bake a cake, they might want to go hug a family member, you know, like everyone displays those emotions differently. And it's the same when you go through something, your reaction to those things are different. And, you know, you're no less strong if you don't want to talk about, you know, a situation where you were sexually assaulted or raped or sexually abused than you are if you speak out about it and talk to them. Like, I know I'm quite an open book, and I know that part of my healing process is to talk about things, and not necessarily just to help myself, but if I can use it to help other people as well, I think that's like a massive like reason behind it. But I know there's just as, you know, it takes just as much strength to deal with it internally and in your own way. And I think that's something that we need to definitely remember and appreciate. You know, like, there's no right or wrong way with these things. And I think that is something that needs to be ingrained in everyone's mind, you know, whether you're male or female, whether you're a victim or not. Like, I think it's just, we are all human, yes, but we are all different. And it's so important to remember that. And like, just because you're a boy doesn't mean you're gonna, or a man doesn't mean you're gonna be like every other man. And just because you're a woman doesn't mean you're gonna be like every other woman. There's no point making these gender norms of like, you're a man, so you behave this way, and you're a woman, you behave this way, because, you know, I might have more similarities to society's expectations of a man than I do of a woman. Do you know what I mean? Like, everyone is different. Everyone reacts differently. There isn't a male or a female way of reacting, behaving, or, you know, anything like that. But feminism, that's pretty much what it is about. Like, it's annoying. I don't know.
I feel like to kind of like overcome everything, you have to, you know, I think a lot of dislike or like hatred or you know, for something comes from a certain level of some certain place of fear or just like lack of understanding. So like if we actually all just went back and like thought about why the world is the way it is and why things were set up the way they are, like, you know, men obviously caveman times, women weren't physically, like, it's not like nowadays where it's not like we're like, you know, having to go out on the street and fight off, you know, a wolf, where you would need a man with you. Like, we're so much more advanced, like, you know, we're fine now. But when you go back to the olden days, like, men were the breadwinners. They had to be stoic. They had to suppress their emotions to deal with, because I mean, the shit that like men must have seen like back in the day, like, you know, just slaughtering people all the time, like, you know, at nights, like cavemen, like all the shit that they had to do to provide for their families. you know, the only way to cope with that without them, you know, falling apart and then losing an entire you know, tribe or like, you know, human life source was they just had to suck it up and deal with it. And I mean, women, the same for women, that it made sense that, okay, well, you can't fight, so your role is to look after and raise the children who will then protect us when we're older. So I mean, it all makes sense deep down, like certain things, but it's once you understand them where it came from, then you can understand now that, okay, well, this mindset is no longer necessary in our society because we don't live the same way anymore. Rather than just being like angry at the fact that we're viewed a certain way. I think, yeah, if in schools we should just be educated more on, I don't know, like our like evolution and history and why. And I mean, I mean, for me, it helps explain why everything is the way it is.
Kind of, we've gone off topic, but in a very beneficial way. You know, we've kind of said like it's okay to be the way you are and express the way you are. And
It's okay not to be okay.
okay not to be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like, you know, and you know, I think in the future, like I know I want to be a primary school teacher. Don't know about you guys, but I know that I'm going to constantly be pushing forward to have more education about consent because I think it's just so important. But hopefully this video, to anyone who's watched, whatever, hopefully it educated you a little bit and it benefited you to hear us talk about it, and maybe might even encourage you to open up a conversation about it and talk to your friends about it, and maybe even pull up your friends if they're doing something that isn't quite okay. Or encourage your friends to speak up about something they've been through that wasn't quite okay. Yeah, thank you for watching and listening. Our Instagrams will be in the description. Yeah, thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.